Hi everyone, my name is Miss Elena with Boys and Girls Club, and today for City Financial we are going to be talking about business. Now, this lesson is intended for ages 10 through 12, and let's go ahead and get started. So what to expect from today? We are going to do an intro, an icebreaker, some real-life examples, learning checks, and closure. Now, before we begin, we are going to do this lesson by organizing it into a KWL chart. You might have heard of this before, but it's a great way to take notes when learning about new things. So you need 3 columns with a K, a W, and an L. Just like that. Just like that. So you're going to have your 3 columns. And it doesn't have to look nice. So your K is what you know already about the topic. Keep in mind we're talking about business. Your W is what you want to learn, and your L is what you have learned. So I'm going to give you about a minute to go into your chart and write what you know about business. All right, now that you've filled out what you know about business, I want you to go in and write about what you want to know. So this is things that you wonder about, things that you have questions about, or anything in between. All right, now that we have what we know and we want to know, let's get started. So for our introduction, before we can really get into anything, there's some vocabulary that I want us to go over so that we are all on the same page. All right, so you'll see these words on the screen below, but let's go ahead and look at them together. All right, some vocab that we need to know before we get started. Cost. So cost is how much you spend to make something. Cost could include materials, paying employees, and anything else that you might have to pay for when making a product. So your profit is how much you will make once your product is sold. So ideally, your profit is going to be higher than your cost, and that's something that you have to consider. So your price is how much you sell something for. So your price, take away your cost, is your profit of how much you made. Also, a stock. We might not talk about it too much, but just to have a basic idea, a stock is a share of ownership of a company. So if you have stock in Nike, you make a little tiny percentage of what Nike makes. And lastly, an entrepreneur is simply a business person. Remember, as we go through, I encourage you to fill out the Learn section of your KWL chart. Okay, so let's go ahead and do an icebreaker. I want you to take like 15 seconds to think of something in your world that you think costs too much money and if you can make it less expensive. Think really, really carefully before we come back. All right, so when I was thinking about this question myself, I could not help but think of shoes because I love them and I constantly find myself spending way too much money on them. Now, my favorite pair of shoes, my Air Forces, they cost upwards of like $100, but I love them. And I always try to think, why is it so expensive? Could it be made less expensive? And really and truly, probably not. So let's get into some of our learning checks, and we are going to go over cost. This is so important when starting a business. So I want you to think, what are all the different ways that it might cost to produce something? All right, so flip over your paper on the other side of your KWL chart, and we are going to write down some of these costs that could go into making shoes. We'll go over them together. So suppose your designer gets $20 for every pair of shoes sold, okay? So that's $20 towards your cost. Materials for your shoe, now we're talking about one pair of shoes, so this will get multiplied for all the pair of shoes that you sell. But let's just focus on this. So your designer gets $20 for every pair of shoes sold. The materials for your shoes cost $30. Your employee is paid $10 an hour to make shoes, but they make one pair of shoes in 2 hours. So your employee gets paid $20 for each pair of shoes made. And lastly, it costs $5 to send each individual pair of shoes to stores and to market them. So let's add them all up together, and what do we get? Good job. So you should have gotten that it costs $75 to make your shoes. Now, keep in mind that your price for your shoes is $100. Now, what did we say was our formula for profit? Our formula for profit was price minus cost equals profit. So let's think about it together. All right, so let's look at it. So we now know that the price of our shoes is $100, but it costs $75 to make each pair of shoes. Pretty simple. Now, what is our total profit? Awesome job. Your profit's going to be $25 for each pair of shoes sold. Awesome job. So if you successfully sold 300 pairs of shoes, your profit would be $7,500. So as a business owner, you have to go through and you have to think, can I afford to make only $25 off each pair of shoes? Is that a lot? Is that a little bit? Every single business owner has to think of this, regardless of if it's shoes, if it's clothes, if it's food, whatever it may be. There is a cost for everything you make, and you really need to make sure you can afford it. So this is super important when you go into thinking about if you ever wanted to make a business for yourself, keeping in mind that anybody at any age can be an entrepreneur. What makes you want to buy something? Is it the person that's promoting the product? Is it the way it looks? There are lots of different things that might make you want to buy something. And a lot of this has to do with advertising and marketing. In big companies, there are whole groups of people called marketers who work to make sure that this product looks intriguing and that people either want the product or the service. When thinking about starting your own business, you want to think about why your product is so important, why it is so interesting, innovative, and why other people might be interested in buying it as well. Being able to find little ways to market yourself is one of the most important things you can do to get your business started.
As we can see below, these are all brands that have marketed themselves in a way where they are recognizable almost anywhere. All of these brands have either a logo, colors, images, something that represents them and makes them recognizable to other people.
So as we're talking about real life examples, I wanted to show you some real examples of child entrepreneurs. So first we're going to start off Mosiah Bridges, and he started Mo's Bows when he was just 7 years old. 10 years later, he is now 17, and his business is still thriving as he has been on multiple TV shows in order to show what his business has to offer. Now, not everybody might have those resources, but everybody can start where Mo did as well.
Joshua Manrich is an 11-year-old boy located in St. Louis, our hometown. After struggling and having to repeat the 4th grade, Joshua was struggling a lot with his self-esteem. His mother tried to find different ways to interest him in school and asked him what he wanted to do going forward. He told his mom that he just wanted to own a car dealership and design cars. Like many other boys, he loved cars. His mother told him that since he was only 10, he couldn't just start making cars and owning a dealership. But she recommended that he think about other parts of the car, like the insides or even what they smell like. And with that, Mr. Fresh became a big idea for him. Joshua took this idea at full force and wanted to create something that could make anything smell good, in his own words. He finds this company important not only for himself, but he wants to inspire other people in the St. Louis area that may struggle with confidence to consider starting a business.
So now let's talk about Mikayla Ulmer. She started her business when she was just a young girl after she got stung by 2 bees in 1 week. This inspired her to learn more about bees and ultimately started her business selling lemonade. Let's learn more about Mikayla now.
If you go to Mikayla's website, she has a page called Our Sweet Story. Let's read some of it. When I was just 4, my family encouraged me to make a product for a children's business competition and Austin Lemonade Day. So I put on my thinking cap, I thought about ideas, and while I was thinking, 2 big things happened. I got stung by a bee twice. Then, my great-granny Helen, who lives in Cameron, South Carolina, sent my family a 1940s cookbook which included her special recipe for flaxseed lemonade. I didn't enjoy the bee stings at all. They scared me. But then something strange happened. I became fascinated with bees. I learned all about what they do for me and our ecosystem. So then I thought, what if I make something that helps honeybees and uses my great-granny Helen's recipe? That's how Me and the Bees lemonade was born. It comes from my great-granny Helen's flaxseed recipe and my new love for bees. So that's why we sweeten it with local honey. And today, my little idea continues to grow. It was a sweet success from the start. Year after year, Mikayla sells out her Me and the Bees lemonade at youth entrepreneurial events while donating a percentage of the profits from the sales to her lemonade local and international organizations fighting hard to save honeybees. This is why she touts, buy a bottle and save a bee. Now at age 14, when not at her lemonade stand selling all the digestive benefits of flaxseed, you can find Mikayla leading workshops on how to save honeybees and participating in social entrepreneurship panels. Mikayla launched her own Facebook page where visitors can like interesting facts about bees, honey and me, and bees lemonade.
Advertisements are all around us. We get them on our phones, we hear them on the radio, and we see them on TV. It is so important that when you are a consumer and you are buying products, that you are listening very carefully to what the product is and why it is being so heavily marketed. When you're thinking about starting your own business, you want to understand how that business might come across to other people, especially if it's being heavily advertised. Keeping in mind that advertisements are not always what they may seem, and it's very important to be a smart consumer, both as a business person and somebody that wants to go out and buy product. Okay, now, so remember, you should be filling out your learn part of the chart for what you have learned as we go through this lesson. So keeping in mind that while starting a business might seem exciting, there are risks to starting a business. Now, risks are things that could cause you to lose money as you go into thinking about owning a business. Some of the risks that come with owning a business is that some people may not buy your product. Now, perhaps the biggest thing is that you need to have a market. And a market is simply people that want to buy your product or service. A business can, like I said, be a product, but it can also be a service, things that you do for people. Now, if nobody wants that product or service, nobody's going to buy it, and you're not going to make any money. So you have to have savings so that you can start a business, and it always costs money to make and distribute products. So you must account for every single cost in order to make a profit. Any hidden costs that come up could end up costing you money that you may or may not be able to afford. You've likely seen signs of places that are going out of business, meaning that they can no longer stay open. A lot of times this happens because people can no longer pay their employees or sell their product, and they end up actually losing money, and they might even end up in debt. Debt is one of the biggest risks as well when thinking about business, and is something you want to avoid at all costs. Debt is money that you owe to other people. So say you end up having to pay your employees, but you don't have any money for it, you'll end up being in debt because you actually do have to pay them regardless of if you have the money or not. And that goes into a lot of other things as well. You can be in debt to people who sell you your product. You can be in debt to people that own the building that you work out of. And debt can really get you into a lot of trouble when trying to make money and keep your business thriving.
So there are some things that make businesses successful, and while we can't go into everything today, we can start to scratch the surface on some things that are pretty consistent from business to business. Now, the first thing is strong planning. We've talked a lot about being able to budget and have money so that you end up making a profit after you take care of all of your different costs. Another important thing is creative marketing and having a unique idea. Our world today has so many different types of products, and so people want something new. It is very important to be able to market yourself so that you stand out and are intriguing to potential customers. You also need to understand the risks and the reward of having, owning, and operating a business. We talked a lot about the risks and the potential to lose money. And while there are financial rewards in owning a business, you might also be able to have personal rewards. We saw that Mikayla really likes to donate her money to help bee populations, and she has a very strong personal connection to her business. Lastly, it's important to get organized and to do lots of hard work. Organization is what will make everything be consistent and run smoothly and really help your business thrive. Hard work is also just as important. As we know, Rome was not built in a day, and neither has any other business. It takes a lot of time and consistency. All right, lastly, let's go over what a little business plan could look like. So here we have something that really lays out everything, and I think would be really interesting to do if you have any ideas for something you would want to do yourself. So it essentially has your business idea, and they ask you different questions. What is your product? What is the big idea? What makes your idea different? Because we talked about things needing to be interesting. As well as how are your products going to stand out and why do people want to buy it. You have your business name, you have your target market and demographics. Remember, your market is who's buying it, so who will it be, who are you marketing to. You also want to talk about how will you go about telling people about your business, how are people going to find out about it. There's also, it asks about pricing and profit, and we've also gone through how to determine that as well. So I encourage you to pause the video, look over these scenarios, and start your own business plan.
Alright, so I know that we have learned about a lot of information today, and I want you to go ahead and look at your filled out KWL chart. Look at what you wanted to learn. Is there something you might have been missing or that you haven't learned? If that's the case, feel free to ask questions to UGC staff and people around you, and they'll probably be able to answer those questions as well. Alright, a little bit of closure and we'll wrap this up. The biggest thing to keep in mind is that you are never too young to start thinking about businesses and starting a business. Those innovative, creative ideas that you've thought of are definitely worth something. And then remember, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask anybody around you and we would be happy to answer.